Aurora, Nevada, located near the California borderline, just north and east of Bodie, California. Established in 1860, now lies under a thick cover of sagebrush, many miles from civilization. In this upcoming episode, we're going to learn about its history, so please stay tuned.
Good morning. I've been camping out throughout eastern California and parts of Nevada for several days now, doing some ghost town hunting and viewing. Today we're going to call or look at a place called Aurora, Nevada. It's not too far north of Bodie, California. Unfortunately, there was not an easy route to get there due to the washouts that happened during the winter months this last year. They had such a severe winter up there. It really did major damage to the roadways up there and makes them not passable. So I've had to take a long route around to go see Aurora. And furthermore, again, as I said, I was been out camping, so I've been disguising my camp coffee in this normal cup that I've been using. So anyhow, we're going to go check out Aurora, Nevada. As I understand, there's not a whole lot of physical buildings left there, but it's got a wonderful history, and I'm excited to go check it out. So come along with me, and let's go do some exploring in Aurora, Nevada.
James M. Corey, James M. Braley, and E.R. Hicks founded the town in 1860. Soon after its founding, a small crowd of miners quickly moved into the area. By April of 1861, the population was around 1,400. The creation of the Esmeralda mining district spawned two new towns in the remote wilderness of what was once the Western Utah Territory. One of the first to arrive at Aurora in 1860 was Joshua E. Clayton, a highly regarded surveyor and mining engineer. His map was created in 1861. He was the first to show the towns of Aurora and Esmeralda Camp. By late November of 1860, Esmeralda Camp was almost deserted, while Aurora's population had grown to about 300. In 1864, the population was close to 6,000. In the spring of 1863, Aurora had 760 houses, 20 stores, and 22 saloons. Like most mining boom towns, the population had a small number of women and children compared to a large male population. By 1869, Aurora's gold mines produced about $27 million worth of gold product. That equates to about 610 million today. The old Esmeralda, near the southern limit of the productive areas, was the first vein discovered in the Aurora district. The town of Esmeralda was built in the gulch just east of the discovery, but later in the year, the present town site of Aurora, about 1.5 miles north, was laid out. The first mill, owned by Edmund Green, was put in operation in 1861. In 1864, there were 17 amalgamation mills in the district. The largest, which had 30 stamps, was the Rio del Monte in Bodie Canyon. Up to the year of 1864, the camp was very prosperous. Aurora had a population of about 10,000 and was the county seat of Mono County, California. During the year of 1864, however, misfortunes befell the camp. The California-Nevada boundary was run and showed that Esmeralda district lay in Nevada. Settled by the boundary survey of 1864, Aurora was found to be 3 miles inside the Nevada border. Aurora remained under territorial government until October 31 of 1864, when Nevada became the 36th state. Aurora was also designated as the county seat for Esmeralda County. Esmeralda County was divided in 1911 by the Nevada Legislature, and Aurora now lies within the area of Mineral County. Today, Hawthorne, Nevada is the county seat of Mineral County, and Goldfield is the county seat for Esmeralda County. Due to the fact that Aurora had an outstanding surveyor as its residence in J.E. Clayton, there was no shortage of beautiful maps created for this area. This is a picture and photo of a map called Brady's map. It was compiled with field notes from J.E. Clayton and created in June of 1862. You can see the detailed drawings around the border of the buildings within Aurora at that time. The demise of Aurora happened soon after its establishment in 1861. By 1864, most of the mines have shut down. Aurora's top three mines were the Wide West, Real Del Monte, and the Antelope. Aurora's mines were owned by hundreds of newly formed mining companies that were headquartered in San Francisco. The rich veins of these three mines were all located on Last Chance Hill. They were also very near the surface, and they became exhausted rather rapidly, and bitter litigation between the mining companies began over the ownership of these veins. With the closure of most mines in Esmeralda Mining District by the end of 1864, Aurora's future prospects looked grim. Without its status as the county seat for Esmeralda County, Aurora would have become nothing more than a forgotten backwater on the Nevada frontier. Resulting from the closures of the mines and the mills, real estate values plummeted during the summer of 1865. Numerous attempts were made from 1865 to the mid-1870s to revive Aurora's mining. Unfortunately for Aurorans, all of those attempts had failed. The biggest inspiration for Aurora's second mining revival occurred in the fall of 1877, when the long-neglected mines of nearby Bodie, California sprang to life. It was Bodie's Standard Mine and Mill that started the boom. Some of Nevada's most prominent business and mining entrepreneurs now had ownership of Aurora's mines. Aurora's prospects soared when the Real Del Monte Mining Company was formed to work the town's most important mines. Aurora's mining boom was beginning to get the attention of Bodie's newspapers, who claimed that the Aurora would soon awake from its Rip Van Winkle slumber and become again what it was once during its glory days. By early of October 1880, the Del Monte mine shaft was down 815 feet on its way towards a final goal of 1,000 feet. 6 months later, the mine unexpectedly closed, beginning an end to Aurora's second boom. In 1885, an English corporation known as the Consolidated Esmeralda Limited was formed. The company soon acquired most of Aurora's mines. Even with all the optimistic publicity, the Consolidated Esmeralda Limited Mining Company closed their mines at Aurora in less than 2 years. To add insult to the injury, Aurora experienced its largest fire in its history during the first week of 1866. The fire destroyed all the frame buildings on either side of Antelope Street, causing about $40,000 loss to Aurora's struggling merchants. About 1 month later, another insult was thrown at Aurora when its city charter, approved during February of 1864, was revoked by the Nevada Legislature. After slumbering as a virtual ghost town by the turn of the century, Aurora sprang back to life in 1903 due to the reopening of Aurora's mines by Bodie's banker, James Stewart Kane. By 1905, most of Aurora's mines were controlled by J.S. Kane and Associates and their Kane Consolidated Mining Company. On April of 1906, Kane's new 20-stamp mill began milling ore from the old Del Monte mine, which resulted in the first bar of bullion to come out of Aurora in more than 25 years. By September of 1906, there were 50 men at work in Aurora's mines, Kane's 20-stamp mill, and his 50-ton cyanide plant. Aurora's last significant mining boom began in 1913 when Aurora Consolidated Mines Company started construction on a huge 500-ton-a-day stamp mill located about a mile north of Aurora. By November, there were 87 men working on the new mill and 30 men working in the company's mines. In addition to becoming the second largest mill in Nevada, the new ore crushing facility was going to be modern in every detail. One of the biggest mining events to occur in Nevada during 1914 was the sale of Jesse Knight's Aurora Consolidated Mines Company to George Wingfield's Goldfield Consolidated Mine Company for about $900,000 during late June. The Aurora mill was running at full capacity by September of 1915. The mines in the mill closed again in 1918. By 1920, only 6 people were recorded to be living in Aurora. The most important event that occurred in Aurora during the 1920s was the removal of Mark Twain's cabin from Aurora to Reno. Mark Twain spent the summer of 1862 at Aurora living in various cabins owned and occupied by his mining partners. The public concern for the preservation of what was believed to be his cabin grew after Mark Twain's death in 1910. In November of 1924, Mark Twain's famous cabin was moved to Reno with the help of then Governor of Nevada and Mayor of Reno. In 1924, a newspaper reporter from Kansas City Times visited Aurora. His description went something like this: "It is truly a deserted village, not a human being in sight, no sign of animal life, nothing but empty and deserted buildings. Along the main street stands a 3-story brick building, several 2-story brick buildings, and others of 1 story, all still in very good condition." A news article that was published by the Hawthorne News in January 1934 is titled "Aurora Becomes Active Again." Development work has been steadily going on at the old camp of Aurora for the past 2 years. Recently, a San Francisco group of capitalists installed a new 75-ton ball mill to work the ore being taken from the Walter McKeough gold property. It is expected the mill will be in operation in about 10 days. The increase in mining activity prompted the return of electricity to Aurora in early 1934. This event was greatly appreciated by the remaining residents, as they had been living at Aurora without power for 14 years. Due to the installation of the ball mill, the population of Aurora swells to about 50 in 1934. Aurora experienced one final spurt of mining activity when the Chesco Mill, also known as the Juanita Mill, was built at Gregory Flat, about 1 mile east of the town. Erected in 1939, the Chesco Mill began processing ore from nearby Juanita Mine during 1949 and 1950. The Chesco Mill ceased operations during January 1952 and has since been torn down. In December of 1944, longtime resident Freed Walker is reported to be the only person left in Aurora. Because lumber was scarce and expensive, and the ingredients needed to make brick were abundant and relatively cheap, Aurorans turned to brick as their favorite building material. Even when wood became more plentiful, the town continued its brick-making ways in an attempt to emphasize Aurora's permanence and importance. Aurora was somewhat unique compared to other Nevada mining camps because most of the town's more important commercial buildings, residences, and stamp mills were made entirely of local manufactured brick. At peak of construction in Aurora, there was 3 to 5 active brick yards, producing somewhere between 600 and 800,000 bricks. Through the years, Aurora has been visited a number of times. Where once stood 1,000 buildings of wood, stone, and brick, not a single structure remains standing today. As one visitor commented, Aurora was the most gone town he had ever seen. In these next series of photos, you will see the systematic destruction of Aurora by brick thieves. Beginning sometime in 1946, the destruction of Aurora's brick building began in earnest. These bricks were hauled off to other areas and used in new construction. Several citizens had complained and written letters to the editor in the papers in Reno. The sheriff, Frank Mulholland of Mineral County, stated that these buildings are being torn down by private owners for the brick. I don't know of any way at the time that we can prevent the destruction. In the early 1950s, most of Aurora's brick buildings are completely gone. In 1960, this public schoolhouse, Aurora's last important brick building, is finally destroyed. I finally arrived at this beautiful town site of Aurora on this great summer day. Let's go do some exploring.
That structure that stands behind me is one of the few remaining structures here in Aurora. That was a substation, electrical substation. But I pan the area behind me. You can see there's not much in the way of structures, but we'll go take a closer look and see if we can find anything else.
One of the best ways to get oriented on this site is to send up a drone. This view is looking easterly. That road that runs to the right is called Antelope, and that's heading south. And the road going up in the photo is Pine Street. That was a main intersection of the town of Aurora, and Pine Street is looking easterly. Today you can still see the evidence of the Del Monte mine and hoisting works. It was the largest structure ever built on the Last Chance Hill. As I understand, it was built in 1863. This mine and its works gone through several different starts and stops. A serious setback to the Aurora's reputation occurred in 1866 when the Del Monte mine was sold for back taxes. Aurora's prospects soared when the Rio Del Monte Mining Company was formed to work the town's most important mines, including the famous Del Monte mine, in October of 1877. Even though everybody in Aurora was optimistic about the success of the mining operations, they ended up closing all the mines in Aurora in less than 2 years. Soon after, all of the equipment and works was dismantled in the Del Monte mine, with some of it being used over in nearby Bodie. Here's a couple of photos of what it looks like today up on the hill where the Del Monte hoisting works were. Near as I could tell, these appear to be debris piles from the residential areas of Aurora. I'm guessing that these residential debris piles are located somewhere around in this general area. This would be the site of the superintendent's house, located at the top of Pine Street. And here's a photograph of that same house taken in the 1890s. This is what that same house looked like sometime in the 1950s. As I continue to explore west and kind of north of the main intersection at Antelope Street and Pine Street, I ran across this head frame, and as I understand, it was known as the McKeough Mill. Originally constructed in 1912, it's one of two that were actually located in the town site of Aurora. In 1935, the mill was operated for a short period of time by the Western Consolidated Mines Company. This is a photograph of that same mill taken sometime in the early 1950s. The head frame was housed inside that shed-looking structure. As always on my adventures, I will take photos of any interesting animals that I run across. This happens to be, according to Nevada's Department of Wildlife, a common sagebrush lizard. These ruins were very close to the mill that we just looked at. This happened to be what they call the McKeough House. It was built around 1880 and was occupied through 1915. This is a photo of that same structure, dated around 1950s. When you first arrive to the town of Aurora, you notice this great big concrete structure here. This was the site of a two-story brick building known as the Cairo store, and it had a basement in it. And then it was built in 1864 and later became the Emerald Brewery Company in 1880. And this concrete wall that you see here was added to the interior of the building in the early 1900s when it was converted to the power substation when the electrification happened in Aurora in 1910. This is a photo depicting that same building from 1888. There was a small wash adjacent to this structure. I didn't spend a whole lot of time looking for bottles, but they had a lot of recent torrential downpour rains. I thought I'd walk up this wash and see if I can find any bottles on the surface. This is what I saw.
This bottle right here probably became exposed after the torrential rains that they had. Unfortunately, it's all I got. Just a little small square bottle, it looks like. Don't have much else to go. There's no imprint on anything. Still fun to see these things. Here's a small round bottle. Doesn't have any markings on it at all, but just to give you a scale, you can see how much smaller it is than perhaps a Pepsi bottle, but you can see a little bit of pattern on the bottom. I don't know what that is. But just to think,
a long time ago,
some of these folks out here actually used and touched this bottle and then discarded it. So I'm holding something that somebody else held 100 and some years ago. Isn't that awesome?
Along the northerly side of Pine Street, just east of the Antelope main intersection, there seemed to be a high concentration of brick debris. I believe this area to be where Tunnel Saloon was, Wingate Hall was, the Pioneer Drugstore and Tavern and Saloon, and the Aurora Drugstore. This is a photo of that same site dated 1951. I believe these foundation ruins are that of the city meat market built in 1864 and then later became the Last Chance Saloon up until 1915. A photo from 1950s of that same location. This debris, bricks, and somewhat of a rock foundation, I believe is that of the schoolhouse. This is the abandoned schoolhouse from a photo of 1951. While I was exploring in and around Aurora, I ran across this unique rock outcropping that looked similar to a man. When I came back and did my study for Aurora, I found an old photo from the 1880s of that same rock, and here is a side-by-side comparison.
This is perhaps one of the mill sites. There were several of them nearby between Bodie and Aurora. And it looks like this may be a site that used to have a mill.
Aurora's mining companies built a total of 17 stamp mills to remove gold and silver from the mined quartz ore at a great cost to its shareholders. Their existence, however, was short-lived, as most of the stamp mills were dismantled and moved to nearby mining regions after the gold ran out in the mid-1860s. Here are some partial ruins of one of the nearby mills. This photo was taken in the 1950s. And today, all that is existing there is just a portion of a rock foundation. These are the concrete foundation ruins of the Aurora Mill. Began construction in June of 1913 and became operational a year later in June of 1914. It was reported in September of 1915 that the quantity and quality of ore entering the mill began to fall below the expectations. Soon the mill became unprofitable, and by late 1918 the company shut down all of its operations at Aurora. The once famous Aurora mill was soon dismantled and shipped to other mining areas in Nevada.
Well, thanks for joining me on my trip to Aurora, Nevada. It was a wonderful summer day there. It's only about 9-10 miles north of Bodie, California, where it is infamous, horrible winters there, so I would imagine Aurora is very similar during the winter months. It's got a wonderful history there. It's just as important as Bodie. Unfortunately, there's very little there as far as physical evidence of the town being there. Most of the town was built with brick, and in the 1940s, 50s, and 60s, many brick thieves came up there and dismantled those buildings, so there's hardly anything left. But again, I'm glad you guys got to join me on that. I hope you enjoyed the video. Thanks for watching.